In Revelation chapter 21, verses 1 to 5, we find a powerful vision of hope and renewal, describing the final fulfillment of God's plan for creation. Here is a story based on this passage. The new heaven and the new earth, a vision of eternal renewal. John, the last of the apostles, stood in a state of awe and wonder. The vision that unfolded before his eyes was unlike anything he had witnessed. The world as he knew it had been consumed by the passing of the old order. The heavens above had been rolled up like a scroll, and the earth, once filled with sorrow, strife, and sin, was no more. What now came into being before him was something entirely new, something radiant with the very glory of God. I saw a new heaven and a new earth. John recorded in the scrolls of his revelation, struggling to capture in words the majesty of what he beheld. The former heaven and earth had passed away, their corruption purged, and the sea was no more. The great restless ocean, which for ages had symbolized chaos, fear, and separation, had vanished. In this new creation, there was no place for the forces that had once divided humanity or driven fear into their hearts. The world was serene and whole, untouched by the tempests of the past. As John's gaze followed the unfolding scene, his attention was drawn to a dazzling sight, the holy city, the New Jerusalem, descending from the highest heaven. The city seemed to shine with a light not of this world, as if every stone, every street, and every wall was woven from the brilliance of God's own glory. It descended like a bride adorned for her husband, radiating beauty, purity, and joy. Her splendor reflected the promise of a union so intimate, so eternal, that all of creation would witness it in reverent awe. The New Jerusalem was not just a city of buildings and walls, it was the dwelling place of the redeemed. Every inch of it spoke of a divine intimacy between God and his people. John could sense it in the very air, thick with holiness, as if heaven itself had taken root on earth. Suddenly, a powerful voice, like the rush of many waters, yet tender with love, resounded from the center of the throne that stood at the heart of this holy vision. The voice seemed to echo across the new creation, speaking not just to John, but to all of humanity. Behold, the dwelling place of God is now with mankind. He will live with them, and they will be his people, and God himself will be with them and be their God. The promise was finally fulfilled. Since the days of Eden, humanity had longed to walk with God as Adam and Eve once did in the cool of the garden. Now that longing was answered in full. God was no longer distant or hidden behind veils, temples, or prophets. He was here living among his people. His presence, which once filled the tabernacle and temple in measures, now filled the entirety of this new world. There would be no separation, no barriers of sin or suffering. The promise of God's presence was followed by something even more profound. The voice, warm with compassion and kindness, proclaimed, "He will wipe away every tear from their eyes." John felt the weight of these words. They carried the power to heal every wound, every sorrow that humanity had ever known. Every tear shed in moments of grief, every heartbreak endured, every loss mourned would be undone by the gentle hand of the Creator. The hands that had formed the universe were now wiping away the tears of his beloved children. And with that act of divine tenderness, the voice continued, "There will be no more death or mourning or crying or pain, for the old order of things has passed away. In this new heaven and earth, death, the last and greatest enemy, was no more. No grave would ever again be dug. No heart would ever break with the sting of loss. The oppressive weight of sorrow, the wrenching pain of mourning that had clung to humanity like a dark shadow since the fall, was gone forever. Crying, once the universal language of human suffering, had no place in this new creation. And pain, whether physical, emotional, or spiritual, was a thing of the past, a distant memory of a world long since redeemed. The old order, the world marred by sin, rebellion, and suffering, was gone, never to return. All the brokenness that had plagued humanity was wiped away with it. As John stood overwhelmed by the beauty and perfection of this new creation, the one seated on the throne, majestic and glorious, spoke again. His words carried with them the weight of eternity. Behold, I am making all things new. This was not simply a renovation or a restoration of the old world. It was a complete and perfect transformation. Every molecule, every atom, every soul was remade in the likeness of God's eternal purpose. It was as if the Creator was recreating the universe with the same joy and love with which He had first spoken it into existence. The one on the throne declared the end of everything that had stood against His perfect will, and now His work was complete. The old had passed and the new had come. God had at long last reconciled all of creation to Himself, and the great redemption plan, begun in the garden and culminating at the cross, had now reached its glorious fulfillment. In this new heaven and earth, humanity would live forever in the unbroken presence of God, where death, suffering, and sin would never again tarnish the joy of life. Every tear would be wiped away, and the world would be a place of eternal peace, joy, and the direct communion between God and His people. This is the promise of Revelation, chapter 21, verses 1 to 5, the ultimate hope for Christians that God will make all things new, and the glory of His presence will fill all of creation forever. Please like and subscribe to help us grow our spiritual channel. Thanks.